Christina, how are you?
I'm making it.
Let me take a step back. Dr. Christina Greer. No, because you've earned it.
Thank you.
You've earned it. It's a lot of work.
I got some scars.
It's a lot of work. So let's start by Dr. Christina Greer. A lot is happening. I want you to just riff on everything that's going on. Re-mayor, re-Justice Department, re-him laying low for a couple of days.
Right.
Sick. And
right.
Look, everyone, let's pray for his well-being, because the reality is, right, everyone, separate of that, titles and all that, right, we wish him well, and we wish him health and prosperity because he's running our city. But what are your thoughts on all of it? I read your quote in the New York Times, which is something I've said multiple times, that the criminal justice system, historically, facts, Central Park 5, we can go on about how it's just not been, right? What are your thoughts on the latest developments? And I want your analysis. The quote wasn't enough for me. So
right.
I want
There's a lot behind that quote.
Please.
Okay, so let's start with this. First things first. If there is something wrong with Eric Adams, we keep him in prayer, right? I have the utmost respect for public servants, people who run for office, people who hold political positions. I don't want to do it, so I'm glad people volunteer to do it. He's a 60-something-year-old black man. So, hey, he very well could have some medical issues, and he very well could need a mental health day. But I think we all know if it was really something medical, we would know nothing about it. So there's that. I'll also start with the quote that my grandmother used to say: if you lie, you cheat. If you cheat, you steal. If you steal, you lie. Now, this particular mayor and his administration have consistently lied to the press, whether it's white lies, whether it's lying by omission, lies nonetheless. So, unfortunately, when there's a situation where the mayor says, I need some tests done, people are like, this cat's lying. And if you are a known liar or perceived to be a liar, then it's also you're a cheat and you're a thief as well. So when you have a whole cadre of your crew with confiscated phones and possibly under various federal indictments, mayor included, then it has this shadow of corruption, which remains to be seen, but also this idea that so many black New Yorkers, and I'll talk specifically about that in a minute, but it's like, we know you can't do what they do. And by they, I mean white folks, right? I've said time and time again on my podcast, FAQ NYC, if Bill de Blasio were not a white man, I think he'd be under the jail. But hey, he is a white man, so he's not. Eric Adams, you should know that. Walking in as the second black mayor of the largest city in the United States, you can't even give a perception of cutting corners. You can't give a perception of hanging out with unsavory characters. You should not have anybody in your squad who isn't of the utmost character and actually knows how to do the job. However, you've surrounded yourself with people who came to the second location who had no business being at the second location with you. You should have cut them off back in the day when you were in Albany. You should have cut them off when you were Brooklyn Borough president, and you didn't, and they came to City Hall, and here we are with confiscated phones. Where are we now? We've got this crowded mayor's race. No one is emerging thus far as a real challenger. Let's leave Cuomo out of it for a second. Everyone, leaving Cuomo out, is essentially to the left of Eric Adams. Therefore, that's not New York City. You know we're various shades of blue, and we know that we're a moderate to conservative city too when the rubber hits the road. We like things in theory. We love to talk about immigration. In theory, don't let these immigrants come to school with my kids. I don't want to see them in my neighborhood. Don't set up any shelters. I don't want any jails. Like all of the conversations where we test our NIMBY limits and our limits of liberalism are on full display in New York City. And Eric Adams has been relatively successful because he didn't pull a de Blasio. He didn't say, I'm going to make you integrate your schools. He didn't say, I'm going to build community jails. He didn't say, I'm going to make sure migrants are actually integrated into your economic sphere or in your visuals. So that's why it's like folks on the Upper West Side, Upper East Side, that little section of Brooklyn, it's like they may not like the man, but he didn't make them do anything that made them feel uncomfortable either. So the business community hasn't abandoned him. The real estate community hasn't abandoned him. I haven't heard of the Hasidic community abandoning him. Thus far, the labor union hasn't abandoned him. They might. They're in the wings. But, like, the polling numbers show one story. But the chattering class says another story. And then regular New Yorkers are a whole other story, especially when we have barely 20% of the voting eligible population that bothers to show up. So when you have Ramos and Myrie and Mamdani and Stringer and Lander all to the left of the mayor, no one's really galvanizing around them. We still have no education as to really how ranked choice voting works. If you remember 4 years ago, Eric Adams was like, just vote for me. Don't even mess around with the other four. I mean, the strategies, the mathematical strategies of how the mechanics of ranked choice voting works is still confusing to a lot of New Yorkers. We know that so many New Yorkers are just now getting past November 5th and processing January 20th and the hellscape that is the federal government. Emotionally, politically and emotional calculuses are still on the national level for so many New Yorkers. They're not paying attention to the mayor's race fully. They probably won't until, realistically, May. So we have all these forums. We have mayors trying to talk about whether it's bus lines or housing or policing or the subways or whatever quality of life issues matter in New York City. But we have to make sure that we're not navel gazing and just kind of, circular talking, because a lot of New Yorkers don't have the bandwidth right now to even think about these things, right? We always talk about there's voter fatigue. I say New Yorkers have voter apathy. We have voter fatigue. We are asked to come to the polls 3 times a year, damn near every year, constantly voting, which, listen, Chicago style, vote early and often. I'm also Black, so I feel like it is my duty, honor, and privilege as a Black woman and also as a political scientist to go to the polls whenever I'm asked, because of the long legacy of the Civil Rights Movement and the Voting Rights Act and Black people and my grandparents who couldn't vote and my parents who, integrated various spaces. So I see it as a different application. But for a lot of people who have kids and, jobs and not a career and limited resources, financial and otherwise, going to the polls 3 times a year is a lot to ask of individuals, especially New Yorkers. So where are we with Eric Adams? Is he possibly going to make a deal with the Trump administration? I mean, if I were in his shoes, hell yeah, I would too, right? As a New Yorker, does it frustrate me that he cozies up to what I would argue is a white nationalist regime that is horrendous to all different types of New Yorkers, documented and undocumented? Absolutely. But if I'm going to put myself in Eric Adams' shoes, why wouldn't I? This is what we've seen white male politicians do time and time again. You negotiate your way out of jail time. You negotiate your way out of trouble, period. Trouble that you may have created or trouble that had somehow found you. I don't know. Either way, you're in a pickle. So, yeah, go to D.C., kiss the ring. I think we're being, chastising this Democratic mayor for, going to grovel, humble himself, whatever, rub shoulders with the most, I would say, deplorable regime we've seen in modern history. But at the end of the day, Eric Adams is trying not to go to federal prison. So it is what it is. As much as I may disagree.
You know what the other thing is, Christina, to that? When you think about the U.S. Attorney's office in the Southern District, people forget Giuliani came out of there. And Giuliani, we've seen time and time again, and I'm saying he was one of many, right? But Giuliani's an example of someone who we've come to find out is out of his mind.
Oh,
and
he's got mush brain. I mean, he's got alcoholic mush brain.
But who knows what he was thinking then? And
But think about the current Southern District, right? Damian Williams, obviously a young superstar. I'll give him that. But let's look at the Brian Benjamin case. I would say that's a millimeter above a nothing burger. You've tried to take down a sitting lieutenant governor. You succeeded in having him resign, but after a whole bunch of time and money and energy, Brian Benjamin...
And scarred him for life.
For life. Your career...
But that's where I'm going with it.
So
it could be I'm coming around, I have this exorbitant amount of power, and I'm going to use it, and I use Giuliani as an example.
Exactly.
Because come to find out he was out of his mind, and he is out of his mind.
So, I mean, as far as, I read the indictment against Eric Adams. Now, as a political scientist, this just looks like run-of-the-mill white boy stuff to me. That's just to me. Is it illegal? Possibly. Just because everybody does it doesn't make it right? No. But I was just like, this isn't some spectacular, interesting new corruption that we've never seen before. And maybe I just have, unfortunately, a higher tolerance for shenanigans, chaos, and mayhem on a political level because I'm a political scientist and I keep seeing it time and time again on local, state, and national levels. Maybe Donald Trump has desensitized me to a certain extent. Maybe I've just seen mayors across the country sort of, they cut corners and they make deals. And I've seen mayors, yeah. The whole point is people call you because they need favors and you expedite stuff. That doesn't necessarily make it right or legal, but it's how the levers of power work.
What do you, now here's what I just having like conversations with folks, post this in the Times story, breaking the news. Does Cuomo run now? I mean, with
yeah.
No, Carl McCall, Patterson.
I was about to say, listen, Carl.
You know, that's yeah. We saw the nursing home deaths and we've seen the ads. The campaigns have begun.
Right.
Like, let's remind people
I haven't seen
who former Governor Cuomo is.
I've gotten the paper ads. Now, here are a few things, though, about Cuomo.
And there's a pylon there because that entire left.
Right. But there are a few things about Cuomo. So, one, we can't forget, when Cuomo has his back to the wall, he said some wild racist nonsense in the past. So people will remind him of that. And, like, not everybody remembers who Carl McCall is, but the people who actually turn out in a primary, they do. And the ads and things like that. However, we can't end up in a circular talking squad because there are a lot of New Yorkers who remember Cuomo as the adult in the room when Donald Trump was a maniac during COVID. There are a lot of people who remember Cuomo as the one who was like, I'm standing up to this man when everyone else was sort of, cowering. So I do think that there's a divide for people who think that Cuomo should not be in politics. You touch women, you botch the nursing home stuff, you actually aren't this great leader and manager as you purport. And then there are other people who are just like, who else? Like, let's take Eric Adams out of the equation, right? Because ostensibly Cuomo would only run if Eric Adams isn't there. It's like, Brad Lander's going to beat Cuomo? No. Right? I mean, Scott Stringer's going to beat Cuomo? No. Whether the polling data says anything in a debate, like just energetically, who's going to, Cuomo's going to make the case. Who else can go and tell the president, this is what I'm doing, this is what we're not doing? Now, here's my question for Cuomo, and I say this on the podcast all the time. Why do you want to be mayor and go to your former lieutenant governor, who's now the governor, with a tin can, saying, please, Kathy, may I have some more?
I have an answer for that.
And then why would you want to sort of be in service to Donald Trump and Kathy Hochul's time is limited, but you know what I'm saying, whoever's the governor.
Here's my own theory.
Okay.
Remember, his father lost to Koch for mayor. He's a big, let's restore the name, because fundamentally with the way things went down, you name a bridge, right? He has to sort of, there's a level of indication there for the family. One, his father lost for mayor in that constant Koch-Cuomo back and forth in the late 70s. And secondly, let's call it like it is. You have an enormous bully pulpit being mayor of New York City.
Absolutely.
And I could see a world where the former governor, who has an axe to grind, will sort of relish. It's already happening. My understanding is through backdoor channels, right? It's sort of...
You're elevated to a certain level in the national discourse.
And let's face it, the reality is, as bad as former Mayor de Blasio was tortured by Albany, everyone recognizes they may make him at the end of the day, hold him to the end, mayoral control and all these things and make him blink. But you can't hurt New York City because we're the economic engine of the state. So there's a lot of theater. But at the end of the day, everyone recognizes there's but so much you can do because the money.
Right. The money is the money.
We fund the state and arguably the country to some extent.
At the end of the day.
So he will get in that. I think he will actually enjoy using the pulpit, which is New York City, and actually going up there and basically highlighting, real or imagined, whatever he deems as incompetency and...
Now, here are three things, actually. One, I've always said Cuomo was raised in captivity. So, without politics, who is Andrew Cuomo? Like, I think that he's having an existential crisis. And also, men of a certain age, God help you. So, he's struggling with who he is.
And can he wait? The other thing is about being mayor. Right. A year's an eternity. He's 67.
Exactly. So
can he wait? Sometimes it may be, this is the quickest lane.
Right. Well, because as we've seen in modern day American politics, fortune favors the bold, and you don't know what next year is going to look like. So as I say, like, hey, just wait, take out Kathy and whatever.
And Obama, let's not forget, President won from a state senator, not a U.S., to president in 2 years.
Boom.
And de Blasio John Lewis straw donor, Anthony Weiner,
right.
Quinn, and he went from 7% to
exactly.
mayor.
I was on the New York Amsterdam News editorial board, and we interviewed him like July 30th, and we were like, why would we endorse you? You know, you're literally 5th place. And he's like, there's a poll coming out that says, and, you know, because of stop and frisk and all this other stuff. So we know in American politics, especially in a post-Obama, anything. So why would you wait?
9/11 doesn't happen. Fernando Ferrer's mayor.
Boom. But here's also the thing with Andrew Cuomo. I think that he does relish this idea that, like, I don't want to necessarily wait till 2026 because you genuinely don't know, right? Kathy Hochul could have something happen where all of a sudden she's the belle of the ball and here we are. Mm-hmm. But Cuomo is making a very tricky calculus, which is if you run and you lose,
absolutely,
you're done.
Oh, absolutely.
Beat it. Scram. We're tired of seeing you. There's no place for you. You don't even live in New York. Like, it's like, you don't even go to this school. Mm-hmm. Get out of here. Mm-hmm. So, but then again, in 21st century American politics, you can reinvent yourselves. I mean, like, this man resigned in disgrace, and now he's coming. Anthony Weiner's looking around, coming back. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, we have this recycling of these damaged goods. Mm-hmm. However, there is something about the American electorate that feels comfortable with sort of past politicians. You know, don't forget, there's a lot of women of a certain age who think that Andrew Cuomo's Me Too was just a witch hunt, and all 12 accusations
Christina,
are
make
bogus.
a prediction. Do you think he runs?
If Eric Adams is back on track, no. If Eric Adams is pardoned and he's feeling himself and he's got a little wind in his sails, I mean, let's keep in mind, Eric Adams is definitely bruised and damaged, and it looks like he's down for the count.
But with his base, I think, in a world where Cuomo has high negatives, and they're both in it, the mayor reminding people about bail, the mayor reminding about congestion pricing, the mayor
Cuomo gets the inclination, he runs against black people.
Oh, absolutely.
But here's the thing.
And Mayor Adams is a tough, high-energy campaigner.
He plays street ball.
Exactly.
But here's also the thing.
It's going to be bloody.
Here's also the thing. If the real estate community was like, we're done with Eric Adams, I'd be nervous. If the business community was like, we're done with him, I'd be worried.
And he's sitting on $4 million.
All of these unions, Hasidic community, business, and real estate, those to me are the Mount Rushmore of whether or not you stay in or you get out. None of them have, at least vocally, abandoned him. You know why? Because it took them so long to understand this horse. And they were late to the game betting on this horse. And now that they're with the horse, they're like, there's no other horse thus far that looks like we want to just jump ship. And they haven't had a consensus necessarily. You know, it's like, is Brad Lander or Scott Stringer going to be best for the business community? I don't necessarily think that the business community is doing that. Eric Adams is on some Donald Trump. Everybody back to work. Take off your PJs. Stop all this Zoom nonsense. Get your butts back into these offices because we're paying all this rent. Let's make this money again. Right? And so a la the reshuffling, the Eric Adams 2.0, when he's actually had some folks have to come in who have some governing experience, who actually do seem like adults in the room, who are righting the ship in certain ways, I think a lot of the big four are like, well, let's wait and see. Like, let's check it out. So, Cuomo, I mean, listen, the man needs attention. Dare I say, I don't want to self-diagnose therapy.
What I hear time and time again with most of the folks that come on, is that the personnel changes have sort of allayed a lot of concern and fears in his top level of his administration. Meaning it's to shore the Abneys, the Rebneys, and the power players, the people that decide, right? Real estate, banks, et cetera, that, to your point, there are people there that the Jesse Tishes, that there are people there who are sort of minding the store. To the point of making sure that the big forces in the city are in a good place in terms of how making sure the trains run on time.
Right. And I think with this second iteration of people coming in, let's just use Jessica Tish as an example. I know people are like, she could be mayor. Maybe. There are a lot of hurdles there. But she seems like an adult.
Mm-hmm.
She seems like someone who understands the city. Mm-hmm. She seems like an effective manager. There were some other people in the administration beforehand that didn't necessarily seem like they knew or cared about their positions. And so if Adams can say, hey, listen, is the city surviving? I've always said this on the podcast. The city is surviving. I mean, we were talking before we got started rolling. This ain't the 70s. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we have a few unfortunate events every now and again on the subway that sort of make people feel unsafe. But let's be clear.
I'm not going to minimize that, Christina. But I know a world of 3,000, 4,000 homicides where there was no social media then.
Right, and let's
3-card Monty, lawlessness, the train, the light in the train flickering in and out.
Yeah, listen, I was just
people forget there were no lights on the subway.
I was talking to Harry
Graffiti
Siegel.
up.
I was talking to Harry Siegel. My favorite movie is Coming to America. And I was saying the scene when
by
they're
the way,
on the subway.
I got a good line.
Graffiti everywhere.
I have a good line from Coming to America. You see when he says in Coming, which is, to me, is like quintessential New York. He goes to Madison, watches a St. John's game when the Johnnies were the Johnnies. He goes to McDonald's over on Queens Boulevard. That's McDowell's. But you know where he lives when he says, I want to live poor. You know where that is? Take a wild guess.
Where?
Williamsburg. Look at Williamsburg now.
Please.
That is Brooklyn.
Right.
Williamsburg. Look, that apartment building is in the south side of Williamsburg.
Wow.
Go there now.
Wow. If you can afford it.
Thank you.
You can take an $80 Uber over there.
Yeah.
Now, here's also, I think the graffiti, I was thinking about the city, because they're surviving, they're thriving. Mm-hmm. And I think the frustration that I've always felt with Eric Adams is it's like, because you're too busy at the club, because you're too busy sort of focusing on yourself and making everything about you, we could be thriving. I think we're fine surviving, relatively speaking. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we always have those calcified pockets of crime in the neighborhoods that just never seem to emerge out of it, no matter who's in charge. But, I was thinking the other day, Biggie, favorite rapper, 1993, Ready to Die. The album opens with Biggie robbing people on the train. Yeah. We are nowhere near that, thank goodness. And I don't think that we're inching towards that. And so even though I have issues with cops playing Candy Crush and not looking up from their phones and doing their job, and I feel like we're paying overtime, that is unnecessary.
Yeah, but Biggie Ready to Die, if you go to Fulton St. John's now, it's not Fulton and St. John's when Biggie was standing on the corner.
Absolutely not.
Freestyling with people.
Absolutely not.
And that's a problem.
So, right,
that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
That's Clinton Hill now. That's not Bedford-Stuyvesant.
We can talk about.
I know, but I'm saying, but that's where Mayor Adams comes in.
Yeah. Well,
that's the large complaint, right? Yeah. Why are people leaving New York City?
Right. Well, people can't afford it.
Why? Thank you.
Listen,
that's where we're going.
I spent 20 years living in Columbia housing. I'm part of the Harlem problem, and then I moved to Brooklyn. It's I reckon I'm a black gentrifier. I am very aware of what that is. As we're going right now, it's not sustainable.
But
I think that this is a larger
constituency that he's leaning on,
yes, of course,
to get reelected,
that's why he's not bothering
them by the minute.
But I think what's fascinating though is that the first time around, don't forget Eric Adams didn't even go to the Upper West Side. He was like, y'all got 6 other choices ahead of me. I'm not wasting my time. So what he needs to do, I would argue, is to sort of have the rehabilitation. Let's just say he's pardoned and he's back on track. Mm-hmm. He needs to have that rehabilitation tour going around to his base in the community, reminding them of the micro things that he has been able to accomplish over time, and sort of asking them to ignore the noise that was the past few months and saying, here are certain measures. I think part of the issue, though, is some of the forces are beyond his control. Everything's expensive across the country. Mm-hmm. And if I feel it, I know that working families feel it. Ubers are expensive. Cabs are expensive. The subway's $2.90. Some of these things he also needs to articulate to voters what is his fault and what's not his fault at all. Mm-hmm. He doesn't control the price of the MTA, even though most New Yorkers think that that's the mayor, right? When the subways were always delayed, I would always hear people say, thanks a lot, de Blasio.
Former governor did a nice job.
Right.
Laying it on.
Right.
Mayor de Blasio. Right. I remember Mayor de Blasio starting town halls, but that was his first question.
Yeah, well,
who controls the MTA?
Cuomo would just shut off. You remember that time he shut off the subway during the snowstorm and didn't even tell de Blasio? People called him hey, dude, I'm stranded.
He's a tough
Cuomo
guy.
was a wild boy.
Yeah.
So, and vindictive and all the things. I mean, I think my issue is thus, and I always said this on the podcast when it was de Blasio v. Cuomo. The only people who lose in this speaking contest are the citizens of New York and the residents of New York, right? And so when Eric Adams is distracted with legal woes or other things, the only people who are going to lose out are us because he's not actually putting us as a priority.
Christina, all right, now I want you to give me over-under.
Oh, goodness.
If the election were today, and let's say Mayor Adams, the charges get dropped, and the Department of Justice says, you know what, we're not gonna move this along. Let's call it a day, and we move forward. What's the over/under on Mayor Adams' re-election prospects?
With a rigorous kind of rebranding and campaigning.
Well, June is an attorney. We see what I tell people too is when we this type of work, we live in a bubble. We live in an echo chamber. If I knew what the hell I was talking about, Trump would have never been mayor. So I don't speak for this, right? I mean, and I don't mean that I'm not. I'm saying in terms of that regular person, who's just trying to figure out how to pay the rent, right? Take their kids to school. They don't start paying attention till
May.
Yeah.
Till May.
And so that's plenty of time. With $4 million sitting on $4 million in the bank, and with the left sort of cannibalizing each other.
I think he's got a really, really, really great show.
What do we say? What percentage?
I think he's got a 65% chance of re-election.
That's a good number.
If he's pardoned, I think he's got a solid 65. Because I think a lot of New Yorkers can't tell the difference between Brad and Scott, comptroller, like both of them are like, liberal darlings or whatever it may be. I think and
Mamdani chipping away, because he will chip away.
Sure, but I think what we've seen...
And I'm talking about how much, when you think about ranked choice and when you think about a base of brownstone, what I call the brownstone belt from Riverdale all the way into now Greenwood Heights, which is really Sunset Park, but they don't want to call it that anymore.
But I think what we've also seen with hardcore progressives is that when the rubber hits the road, one, they tend to cannibalize themselves.
Yeah, Diana Morales, and we saw that last time.
Boom. And two, there's some people who really like the ideas, but when it comes time to pull that lever, I know we don't pull the lever anymore, but fill out that bubble, it's like, well, I don't know. And so I do think that Mamdani, Myrie, and Ramos have interesting, innovative ideas. I don't know if the small base of New Yorkers who actually turn out to vote think that they are, one, I think age, they're ready to lead, and two, translating the skills from Albany to New York City.
I have another hypothetical for you. Do you think Zellner Myrie,
who I think is a smart cat,
does he hurt or damage Eric Adams in any way, shape, or form with his base?
I think Eric Adams hurts Myrie. I think a lot of New Yorkers are like, hey, listen, we had a Negro. We're good. We're good. We're not going to have another black man.
And Michael Blake, you don't think? What do you think? No.
I don't think about Michael Blake.
Okay. Well, enough said.
Well, here's the thing.
That's all right. No, it's fine.
But here's my question. Are you running for mayor or are you running for DNC chair? Oh, wait. Are you running for Congress? Oh, wait. Are you running for public advocate? Oh, wait. Are you running for state assembly? Which one is it? Because for me, a public servant actually has a vision about what they want to do. And if you are simultaneously running for mayor and DNC chair...
Christina, how about this? And then let's move to the state and then we'll wrap it up because I know you got other things going on. Does it benefit Governor Hochul considering that Richie Torres is got this, it's gone on offense, Mike Lawler, her poll numbers, right? People keep highlighting the fact that her poll numbers are... Does it sort of benefit Governor Hochul that Andrew Cuomo wants to play in New York City?
Yeah,
Just think about it. It's like, hey...
If Cuomo wanted to come at Kathy...
You have someone that's aggressive and who has an axe to grind, right? Whether it be Attorney General James or Governor Hochul, pick them. Well, see... Would you say, hey, I'd rather him be...
Right. And I'm on record. On record. I'm not a fan of Richie Torres at all.
Okay.
But what I do think is helpful for Kathy Hochul is that it gets her head in the game now, not in 2026. Like, oh, maybe I should run a re-election campaign. It's like, sweetie, folks are coming for you. Your lieutenant governor might even be coming for you. So, like, whatever it is, you need to sharpen it up.
Statewide, moderate plays a hell of a lot better. It's playing well in New York City.
Exactly.
But I'm saying the hypothetical that maybe it's better for her to Andrew Cuomo former Governor Cuomo to stay in the city.
Oh, absolutely.
For her own,
absolutely.
Her own survival.
Absolutely. Like, I think if Cuomo runs against Hochul, Cuomo wins, to be very honest. Because I think that there's just a lot of complications there. But I do think for Hochul to have these early challengers, it helps her, if she's focused, it helps her recognize, like, okay, Richie Torres is going to be like a mosquito for a while, but there's a way that she can frame who he is, what he's all about, and steal some of his issues, make them her own, before they even sort of have to be on a stage together.
What do you think of that strategy? I'm kind of mixed. I think at some point, it's like the person who has their issues with whoever or whomever. After a while, that kind of people tune you out because, like, all right, we heard you the first time, right? Like, if you keep, there could be sort of a backlash, right? Because then people start just ignoring you, and it's like, oh, it's him. Okay, yeah,
right,
yeah, okay.
Well, I mean, I think
sort of like, hey, I'm focusing on the job and doing things, and all. Like, do you have a day job? Is your day job like? Why don't you focus on trying to push back on Trump and these egregious policies rather than yell and scream all the time, at the governor?
The naked ambition of certain politicians, and we know all politicians have ambition, they're wired differently, we get it. But my argument has always been, and this is sort of my argument about Michael Blake, actually, it's do the job that you have really well, and you will get promoted. If you just are sitting in a seat, and you're just keeping that seat warm while you run for another seat, but you're not at all interested in doing said job in the seat, then you're not going to get promoted. So it's like, Richie, you're playing a wild game right now because as a relatively new congressman, you got to make sure you're delivering for your whole district, not just, there's a specific population in his district that are highly participatory and he's focused on them. But it's like, does your message play statewide? Don't know. Have you done enough in the position that you have right now to actually articulate a real vision? Not sure. And I think that the naked ambition has its limitations.
I have one last question for you, and then we'll wrap this up. What does the fact that the Democrats are now licking their wounds mean for Congressmember Hakeem Jeffries? Is this a moment where he becomes the sort of standard bearer for the Democratic Party, the grown-up, considering he has a certain amount of votes, where he could move certain things because it's such a close majority?
In the past,
caucus with people that are moderate, that because they're a Republican in New Jersey, they can't go nuclear, or they just can't dance with Trump, or those marginal seats in Nassau, whatever, right? Yeah, that could go either way. You could get voted out on something like the salt tax, which Trump but backfired in his own backyard, meaning the Republican Party.
Well, I think Hakeem Jeffries fundamentally understands that, because don't forget.
But is this his moment in time to sort of finally?
This is his moment to sort of quietly build coalition and strength, right? We know that in American politics, traditionally, and we know we're in wild times, however, during the midterms, Americans tend to like divided government. Right now, we're in unified government, where the Republicans control everything. The presidency, the House, the Senate, and the courts, unfortunately. But if we have gone in the way patterns have gone in the past, which is we will re-envision ourselves and get back to divided government during the midterms. That is a good possibility for Hakeem Jeffries, especially since the margins are so thin, for Hakeem Jeffries to become the majority leader. One, he's had great mentorship in Nancy Pelosi, right? Coming from the streets of Baltimore. She knows what she's doing, and
tough.
Don't let California fool you. She's from Baltimore, okay? Nancy D'Alessandro. Two, I think Hakeem Jeffries understands the diversity of the black electorate, so he understands the diversity of the Democratic electorate. He understands that some people are just party captured based on geographic locale. He fundamentally understands that there are a lot of black people, we range from super progressive to highly conservative. This is why Eric Adams makes sense to a lot of black people, because we have Eric Adams in our families, and a lot of black people slide across the ideological spectrum depending on the issue. So Hakeem understanding
faith has a lot to do with the politics too. Absolutely.
So, and class.
It has in my family.
And mixed class.
Faith means a lot.
Right? So, and now we have, black ethnicity, which I've written about, which complicates things even further. And so I think Hakeem Jeffries, let's just look at his district alone. He's had to negotiate sort of that wild ideological diversity. So in trying to coalesce this very complicated caucus, which we've seen him do a pretty solid job.
Yes.
Now, I think the larger question is, can the Democrats organize themselves in a DNC structure and not give that very important job as a patronage politics job like they did to Jamie Harrison, who was wholly unprepared and unqualified for the job? That, to me, is the larger interesting question as to who is going to set the pace and the vision for the DNC, because that is a person that I would argue would touch base with Hakeem Jeffries. What are we doing? Are we doing a 50-state strategy? Are we just keeping it all things politics as local? So it's like, hey, I understand, Roberto, sometimes you got to vote this way because we need you to actually keep your job. So vote against us on this issue, but circle back on another issue. Like, these are the sort of micro-level decisions that I think Hakeem Jeffries is probably thinking about and working on at this moment.
Christina, thank you for being so generous with your time.
Thank you for having me.
Anything you want to add that I forgot to ask you?
Listen, go Knicks. When the Knicks are doing well, the city's doing well. Like,
I was
have a whole
concerned
theory.
for a bit because Dante DiVincenzo, like there was good.
So here's my thought.
You sort of dropped one Villanova cat.
I was
Mikal Bridges
devastated when Dante left because I love the Villanova Knicks, but then Mikal Bridges comes in with the world's longest arms. He's got ET level arms.
Absolutely,
He's been fantastic. Yeah. Campaign has been fantastic. I was not a Julius Randle fan.
I was not.
I thought his energy was bad.
No,
and here's the thing.
He was a left-handed Dominique Wilkins.
And Dominique Wilkins was my first crush, ever.
But I think Dominique Wilkins was. I thought he was a gunner.
But here's the thing
Julius Randle was more
Randle.
concerned with his box score than.
But either you're in or you're out.
Yeah.
And so here's where I think he was damaging. When you're in, and because he was the face of the team at the time, we have to learn how to play to you, right? But then you can't say, well, so then you're out. So then the Knicks learned how to play with a more Brunson, hard
running an offense, not this one-on-one.
So then they'd get into a nice rhythm, and then all of a sudden Randall will come back. So now we're gonna break up that rhythm, and now we're gonna.
And you couldn't run a play because he was doing this one-on-one thing.
In and out. So he's gone. I was sad that DiVincenzo left. I was at that game where he had 11 3-pointers. It was amazing. But I was skeptical about Cat. I have been pleasantly surprised. I did not know if mentally he could handle the New York crowd. A friend of mine did make a solid point last night at the game that Cat hasn't gone through like a real slump. When Knicks lose 10 in a row and the crowd turns on you. He hasn't sort of experienced that because New Yorkers can be real.
Oh, absolutely.
But thus far I'm happy. Now, I do want to have a little sit down with Tibbs because you're playing your starters way too much. We're up 25 points.
He runs
Why are we doing this? Yeah. Let Brunson sit down. Yeah. So that's my
favorite Knick of all time.
Patrick Ewing. I have a complicated story with Isaiah Thomas, but
I was a big Isaiah Thomas. Zeke.
So my family was in the Caribbean when Isaiah Thomas was on his honeymoon. And so we were at this fancy hotel resort, only black people, so my family and then Isaiah. And my dad has a brilliant basketball IQ. And so he's talking to this, black dude while my sister and I are splashing around. And I can't remember how old we were, but we're old enough where we were allowed to stay in the room by ourselves, but we weren't old enough where we had our own room. Yeah. So my parents went down. So my dad, every day we're at the pool, my dad would talk to this random guy. Yeah. So my parents go down to have a drink at the bar. My sister and I are in the room. The phone rings. She's the oldest, so she picks it up. So the guy tells her on the other end to take out a piece of paper and a pen. So she's on the phone with, as a kid, it seems like forever. She's writing down all these letters and numbers constantly. She has to repeat them back again. Just numbers and letters. So she hangs up the phone. My dad comes back to the room. She's like, Dad, some man called and said he called America. And it was Isaiah Thomas, this is before ESPN. Yeah. He had called the United States and gotten all the basketball scores and written them down and then called my dad to give my dad all the scores. So it was like NYK, the DEN, brrr. And so I've always had a soft spot for Isaiah Thomas.
I'm a big Isaiah Thomas fan. Always was. But
Patrick
I
Ewing,
have an issue with Patrick Ewing. I was never a fan. I strongly dislike Patrick Ewing. Yeah. The finger roll with Rick Smits. The 15-foot game. Yeah. Letting Starks put up 25, 30 shots when you're the leader.
Yeah.
Jordan would have never let nobody.
Well, I mean,
Larry Bird.
Jordan's
That's
also
cowardly.
like, he's not
and
wired.
he went from like the Hoya Destroyer to like that jump shot game. Yeah. So my favorite
is
Fort Greene, the King.
Yeah.
Bernard King.
Bernard King.
Bernard King.
He's at the games. He's at the games a lot.
The Knicks and the Pistons at the old Joe Louis Arena, speaking of Isaiah Thomas, he was unstoppable before he tore up his knee.
Yeah.
Bernard King was unstoppable. And he was from Brooklyn. Albert King, Bernard King.
Right.
He was the Ernie and Bernie show, Ernie Grunfeld, the Tennessee. So I'm a big Bird. And when he tore up his knee, to me, he was the one. Ewing would have been the two.
Oh, interesting.
The other thing that the Knicks had that were bad luck, unfortunately, because of the demons in that era, was Michael Ray Richardson. So if you think about the continuity of Michael Ray didn't have the drug issues. And
right. Well,
you put Michael Ray, who was a Magic Johnson, Bernard King, and Patrick Ewing conceivably.
Right.
Because I still believe that was rigged. The lottery was rigged for the Knicks to have the first pick.
Well, I love these conversations.
And the other mistake was trading. I was a big time Rod Strickland fan, and I would have preferred him over Mark Jackson. And getting rid of Rod and keeping Mark.
Right. But see, I feel like the Knicks always did that to themselves, where it's like they make a trade.
Al Bianchi, Rick Pitino.
And it's like, why would you make these trades? It's like, do you want to hurt yourself in the long or short term? Yeah. Like, I don't understand. I think there are a lot of front office decisions with the Knicks that I've just never understood. Yeah. And it's like, are you trying to hurt? Like, are you trying to self-sabotage?
What if Bernard King doesn't tear up his knee the year they draft him?
But I think, I wrote an op-ed. I have a weekly column in the Amsterdam News, and I wrote an op-ed last year after the Knicks lost in round 2 of the playoffs. And it's like, to be a New Yorker is to have hope, right? To be a New Yorker is to dream, whether it's to dream of a greater life for you and your family, economic mobility, whatever it is, the city of immigrants, right?
Christina, I am really happy dream. Right now. You got Carl Towns, who's from Jersey, half Dominican, half African-American Knicks, and the Johnnies are playing hella basketball.
I mean, and forget about the Giants and Jets.
For me when St. John's is Ron Artest, Eric Barkley, Jason Williams, Boo Harvey.
Have you
Mullen?
Have you had Katie
Walter
Honan?
Berry?
Have you had Katie Honan
Felipe Lopez.
Yeah.
When the St. John's is St. John's with that local tri-state area feel, there's
nothing like it.
In New
it's like
York
perfume
City.
is sprayed in the city. And I would be interested for someone.
That list goes on and on.
I would be really interested for someone to do like an analysis of like crime data and Knicks success. Because last year, when the Knicks are on this crazy run and it's just high energy and people are walking past one another, with their Knicks hats on, and you just see grown men like, go Knicks, right? Just strangers, where normally it would just be either a pass or like a mean mug. I'm so curious as to like, do we see a dip in crime?
Yeah, probably.
When the Knicks are doing well? Like the Knicks quotient? Steve Romanowski, I should call him.
It's a part of our social fabric too. New York Knicks, Houston Rockets. I think it was game 6. Knicks had this impressive Derek Harper. I remember they had this impressive run. And the game comes off. And the place it erupted. You know what it was? The Bronco chase.
Oh, Lord.
The Knick came off. And we're like, what is happening? O.J. Simpson's in a Bronco.
We got to follow a car.
They stopped the game to run the Bronco chase.
Wow. I think Ella Fitzgerald died that day after the FedEx. Because I remember I was in Baltimore. Like, what is happening?
Christina, we're going to wrap this up. But we got to have another segment on straight sports, all right?
Because, the Giants and Jets, they're rubbish.
Thank you.